If you grew up shopping in a department store in the 80s or 90s, you remember the layaway counter. A small desk where working families set aside toys, bikes, and Christmas gifts, paying a few dollars at a time until they were paid off. For decades, layaway was a quiet lifeline for households that budgeted carefully and avoided debt. Then it vanished. The counters disappeared. The signs came down. Here's how layaway counters worked, why it mattered, and how it came to an end. For decades, the layaway counter was a familiar fixture in department stores and big box retailers. This was a place where shoppers could reserve an item they wanted without having to pay the full price up front. Unlike modern credit plans or buy now pay later services, layaway was an agreement between the store and the buyer that the merchandise would be held while the customer paid for it in installments over time. Unlike a layaway plan, the shopper would choose the item they wanted, like a bicycle, a holiday gift, or a television, and make a down payment to activate the agreement. The store would remove the item from the sales floor and store it for the customer until the total balance was paid off. Only after the final payment was made could the customer take the item home. Usually, a customer and an associate would complete a layaway contract that included the total price, installment payments schedule, and any service or handling fees. The payments are usually made at regular intervals like weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. As long as the customer keeps paying, the item will remain reserved. If the buyer failed to complete the payments by the agreed deadline, the contract would be canceled and the item returned to stock. During the holiday months, many families use the layaway counters to save gifts for their loved ones without having to pay all at once. It was the best way to plan purchases responsibly without relying on credit, interest charges, or immediate debt. But why did the layaway counters become so popular? Well, it was the Great Depression. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you're enjoying this content so far, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch these videos without subscribing. Imagine what we could accomplish if everyone subscribed. We all thank you for your continued support. For millions of shoppers, layaway was the only way to plan purchases responsibly and make items you couldn't afford outright gradually yours. The idea took root during the Great Depression in the 1930s, when widespread unemployment and scarce cash left families unable to pay full price for gifts, appliances, or other goods in a single lump sum. Retailers responded by offering layaway plans that let customers reserve merchandise while paying for it over time, without charging interest or extending credit. The item stayed on the shelf or in a back room until the customer had made all the payments, and only then could it be taken home. Because there was no credit risk for the merchant, layaway could be offered even to people that had limited or no access to traditional credit. As the economy evolved and purchasing power increased, layaway soon became common in department stores, discount retailers, and big box chains across the United States and other countries. Throughout the mid-20th century, it was prevalent around the holiday season. Families would choose toys, electronics, or holiday gifts early, make a down payment at the store's layaway counter, and then make regular installments until the balance was paid in full, at which point they picked up their purchases. For decades, this offered a cash-based way to budget for larger purchases without relying on credit cards or paying interest, something that made layaway more convenient than other installment plans. The system remained popular from the 1930s through the 1980s and 1990s. But aside from the poor economy and convenience, there was one more reason why layaway counters were so popular, and that's the cash economy. For most of the 20th century, layaway thrived because it fit perfectly into the cash-focused economy that dominated American life long before plastic cards and digital payments reshaped retail. In the decades after the Great Depression, many families didn't have access to credit. They paid for groceries with cash, put down money for rent and bills, and balanced every purchase against what was actually in their wallets. In that environment, layaway became an important tool, especially for bigger or non-urgent purchases. It let shoppers spread payments over time without borrowing money they didn't yet have. The counter meant no interest, no debt, and no need for a credit check, which was a major advantage in a society where most people operated strictly on cash, or they had limited line of credit accounts offered directly through merchants themselves. The broader economy is what made the layaway counters so appealing. Everyday transactions, like paying for groceries or buying shoes, were done with physical money or checks, not credit cards. Consumers didn't expect installment credit as a default part of shopping the way they do now, so layaway worked within a cash-based system instead of depending on borrowed money, making it accessible to millions of families. But when credit cards began to rise and the economy became better, layaway counters started to disappear. The real turning point came as the popularity of layaway counters began to fade, as credit cards became widespread in the 1980s and 1990s. Unlike layaway, which required weeks or months of paying off an item before you walked out of the store with it, credit cards let shoppers take products home immediately and pay later, even if that meant carrying a balance and paying interest. The ability to buy something they needed in an instant, even if they didn't have enough money, offered instant gratification, and that was something that layaway simply couldn't compete with. As credit cards became much easier to get and commonly used by everyday consumers, layaway counters declined sharply. After all, most people preferred to have the item in their hand immediately, rather than wait weeks while making payments. Credit card usage exploded in those decades thanks to advances like the magnetic stripe, easier approval processes, reward programs, and widespread issuer networks that made carrying and using a card simple and rewarding. This rise offered an alternative to layaway and also normalized the idea of buying now and paying later without having to budget cash. There was a cultural shift in consumer expectations around purchasing too. Over time, the convenience of credit cards overshadowed layaway's old appeal. But this was not the only reason why major retailers phased out their layaway programs. Retail economics started to shift, and even the stores couldn't handle credit sales. For retailers, as layaway counters began to decline, it wasn't just about customer preferences. They had to consider the real economics and logistics of running a store in a modern retail environment. Layaway programs require physical space, dedicated staff time, and administrative overhead to track deposits, record payments, manage contracts, and store merchandise until the balance is paid in full. Each item on layaway had to be pulled from the sales floor or stored in back rooms, constantly tracked and re-entered into inventory if a customer failed to complete their payments. That process was tying up valuable floor and backroom space that retailers needed for faster turning inventory like online order fulfillment or buy online pickup in store items. All these services matched modern shopping habits and generated quicker sales for the retailers. For a merchant, layaway was operationally inefficient compared to credit sales. When a product is sold on credit, whether through credit card or modern point-of-sale finances, the retailer instantly receives the payment and can remove the item from inventory right away for the customer. That frees up shelf space and reduces the burden on staff of tracking and storing unpaid items. Many retailers found that credit sales or BNPL options simplified logistics and boosted sales. These were outcomes that layaway counters couldn't deliver. As a result, stores began quietly discontinuing layaway programs, not only because of what customers wanted, but also because they wanted to save money and resources. After all, the retail world was quickly getting dominated by instant payment options and digital fulfillment systems. Competition among the retail stores increased with high purchasing power, and stores focused on fast inventory turnover. It made no sense to hold merchandise for weeks since this took up capital and warehouse space. Soon after, retailers started dropping layaway counters, from the massive supermarkets to the smaller stores. For a long time, layaway counters were a familiar part of the shopping experience in big box stores and department stores. But by the 2000s, a wave of retailers started eliminating them as demand waned and operational priorities shifted. One of the major exits came from Walmart, which announced in September 2006 that it would phase out its layaway service across all stores after decades of offering it, because customer demand had declined steadily, and the cost of running the program didn't justify the space and staff they used. Walmart's layaway service had been a long-standing transition from the early years till now, but by 2006, the company said that shoppers were more interested in credit cards, gift cards, and other payment options. Walmart's decision was significant because it was the largest retailer in the United States, and its exit signaled to the rest of the industry that layaway was no longer important to mainstream retail strategy. Other major national chains such as Best Buy, Target, and Circuit City had already discontinued layaway programs for years by that point, showing there's a decline in retailer support for the practice. In the years immediately after 2006, layaway counters disappeared from many mainstream retail stores, shrinking to seasonal or niche offerings instead of year-round services. Interestingly, some retailers had never dropped layaway, like Kmart and Sears, and they maintained their programs. They even saw renewed interest during economic downturns, but the overall trend in the 2000s eliminated layaway counters instead. So, if you're wondering where layaway counters went, now you do. The mid-2000s was a major turning point, but there was a time when it suddenly re-emerged and became a feature in some supermarkets and chain stores. During the late 2000s recession, layaway counters made a startling comeback. It seemed like it belonged to a bygone era, but as customers tightened their belts and re-evaluated how they made purchases, it became necessary again. At the height of the financial downturn, credit dried up, banks tightened limits, and many shoppers found themselves unable or unwilling to take on new debt. Then, layaway, which lets buyers pay for goods over time without interest and only take the item home once it's paid for, started to look less dated and more useful again. The shift mostly happened between 2008 and 2009, when retailers who had abandoned the practice for a long time started to bring layaway back. This was a way to attract cautious shoppers and boost holiday season traffic. Sears reinstated its layaway program in 2008 after nearly 2 decades off, expanding the option beyond its Kmart locations as customers struggled with the economy. Retailers quickly saw tangible results. Between 2008 and 2009, Sears and Kmart gained more than 3 million new layaway users as shoppers found there were new benefits of paying over time without interest and without needing a credit card. Other retailers expanded their programs or introduced layaway for the first time in years, too. Toys R Us added a layaway option in 2009, and some stores even made online layaway available to meet demand. It wasn't a complete return of layaway counters, but it showed how relevant this system is during times of economic downturns. But retail shopping has transformed in different ways in the past decades, and modern alternatives are already replacing them. In the 2010s, a new generation of payment options appeared, delivering what shoppers wanted the most: to instantly take their product home even if they were paying installmentally. These modern plans, known as Buy Now, Pay Later services like Affirm, Afterpay, and Klarna, let you walk out of a store or complete an online purchase right away. Then you can pay off the cost in a series of installments over weeks or months, usually with little or no interest if payments are kept on schedule. Unlike layaway, where you had to wait to take home the item until it was fully paid, BNPL gives immediate ownership and still spreads the financial burden. The BNPL system is the opposite of the old layaway model. BNPL fits right into the digital retail world seamlessly. These services are integrated directly into online and in-store checkout systems and are offered along with traditional payment methods. Retailers are now partnering with a lot of BNPL providers because this boosts sales, encourages larger purchases, and reduces cart abandonment. Research reveals that retailers see higher conversion rates and higher spending when BNPL options are available at checkout. The BNPL system has grown fast and big over the past decade, showing how deeply this model has taken root. Between 2019 and 2021, the number of BNPL loans in the United States grew more than tenfold, going from $16.8 million to a whopping $180 million, especially with more flexible installment plans. Today, layaway counters are mostly gone from the mainstream shopping landscape and have been replaced by payment systems that fit current consumer behavior and technology. Traditional layaway has disappeared from the biggest retailers. Walmart, once a major provider of layaway, no longer offers a traditional layaway program as of the early 2000s, having phased it out entirely and shifted toward Buy Now, Pay Later and other modern financing options instead. When big chains stopped running layaway counters, those physical decks and paperwork systems faded from the sales floor and has been replaced by digital checkout solutions and financing links built into online and in-store payment systems. Many of the largest retailers partner with third-party services like Affirm to offer buy now, pay later plans, where shoppers can split payments over time but take home items immediately. There are still some places where layaway hasn't fully disappeared. Smaller retailers, independent stores, and certain specialty chains might still offer traditional layaway programs, but these are the exception rather than the rule. Burlington, Kmart, Sears, and a few local outlets continue to provide layaway on a limited basis, and some seasonal or regional offerings still appear at certain times of year. If you visit a big retail store and you want flexible payments, you can find digital financing plans, split payment services, and store credit options instead of a layaway counter. There are now credit cards, shopping cards, gift cards, and more, all of which have transformed the retail economy. Layaway counters used to be a solid part of retail stores, but they have largely faded into history. Now there are faster, more flexible payment systems that meet modern shopper expectations. What's changed is the entire customer expectation around purchasing. Now you can take an item home without paying for it fully. Do you think layaway counters should come back? Let's know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed watching, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and drop us a note in the comments letting us know what you want to see us do next.